So, it's so funny because when I put this there, I was on Crosstalk this morning, and we kind of dabbed our toe into this whole situation. And you can say what you want. Cat's out of the bag. You've been exposed. I think, for all of us here on this network, we've known from the get-go that Israel going into Gaza and bombing them like crazy, carpet bombing them like crazy, was never, ever about Israeli security, was never about getting Hamas. It was all about expanding the Zionist state from the get-go. And this is an old plan, right? They just dusted it off the shelf. Do I believe that they orchestrated and engineered, meaning the Israelis or the West, Hamas and the freedom resistance together attacking the Israeli outlets? No, I just believe they're taking advantage of the situation, trying to twist it as best they can. In fact, I don't think they would imagine a scenario where the resistance, the Palestinian resistance, would have taken so many hostages in exchange for their hostages, and that's presented a quagmire. So even though there are people who feel that, in Israel, that feel that, Hamas has to be wiped off the map, they're not fond of the way the Netanyahu government is handling this situation, fam, because their hostages are still being held. Now, something to point out, I think that you have pointed this out with Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett, and a lot of times we're doing this show. In comparison, when you hear a lot of people in the States, because I was talking to somebody the other day about it and how ignorant they are about the whole situation. Well, what about the hostages? Well, how many Palestinians have been taken hostage by the Israeli government? And children, in fact. The last prisoner exchange, we saw a couple 14-year-old children, fam, walk out of an Israeli prison. One of them with brain damage from being beaten and tortured so much. So, I mean, this is something that people have to understand. I think it is a quagmire of a situation. They didn't count on all these hostages to be taken. And also, fam, I think that they didn't realize what they were getting themselves into, the IDF, that is, because they normally just, once again, the Haya doctrine, just wipe clean, mow the lawn, bomb the place back to oblivion, then go in after. Well, going in after has not been successful for them because Hamas is dug in deep. And they understand how to fight this guerrilla warfare where the IDF, no offense, is a bunch of just chicken shits that just bomb from a distance and then go in after. They're not ready to fight the style of war that Hamas is fighting. And what's being kept a secret is Hamas is kicking their ass every single time they go in there. Okay? They know the territory. They know the terrain. It's on their territory, and they're like, bring it on. So with that being said, I think it's time to establish right now, once and for all, this has never been about Israeli security. This has been about the expansion of the Zionist state. Your thoughts before we put the video between Judge Knapp and Colonel McGregor?
I thought it was a given that it was never
for
about
us.
Hamas, and it was never. I mean, but it is. But it's. I mean, for us, but it's. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point. We're over 6 months into this conflict or actual genocide, not even a conflict. But the only people that say otherwise are Zionists, or those who are protecting the Zionist entity that is Israel. And one of the things that I want to highlight, and this is something I said on George Galloway's show, is that Israel has lost. They have lost not just the public eye and the public image and the public sentiment, but they have lost, as you pointed out, the military aspect of it. They have lost it. They cannot keep up with not just what Hamas is doing, but the entirety of the resistance is doing. Everybody sees what's going on in Gaza and says, oh my God, Israel has to stop what they're doing. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that Israel is this mighty and powerful military intelligence apparatus to the degree that it has been fabled to be. It is a complete lie. Israel has come out as a paper tiger. It's come out as not being anything without the United States support, or without the support of Western Zionists too, who continue to support it against the will of the American people and against the will of many other people in Western countries that have seen what is going on. And so at this point, you can only look at Israel, as you said, they're cowards. They're completely and totally fighting, pretending to fight and just killing civilians. And that's the only thing they have to show for. Military-wise, they didn't meet their objectives. And so this is just something very important. And the other point I want to make before we go into this video is that it's not just about Netanyahu. it's not just let's get rid of Netanyahu, because his own people, as you said, are protesting him because he is one of many. He is but one of many Zionists that exist. Behind him are 40 more Netanyahus that are far worse than he is, which is hard to believe, I know. But he is not the problem. The problem is the entire society of Israel. And you may disagree with me here, Pasta, but I don't think you can fix this by voting electoralism out. You can't fix this mentality.
Fam, can I ask you a question? From what you experienced from going to the West Bank, obviously we say there are much more, and this is something that I think that a lot of people have shown, have they been going into Israel for the last several years. Even Norman Finkelstein said at one point, Israel today is so much more different than it was 30, 40 years ago. 30, 40 years ago, at least there was advocates, Jewish people who were saying what the Israeli state was doing is wrong, that we have to find a way to coexist with the Palestinians, and the treatment of the Palestinians is wrong. Now we have an overabundance of people who are saying, "Oh, they're going to be terrorists. We got to wipe them out before they turn 12 years old." Like literally going after kids and stuff. Did you experience any of those people in Israel and the West Bank that were willing to fight for the freedom and humanity of the Palestinians? Because I mean, I understand. I think when I listened, one of the big messages I get from Vanessa Beeley is that, okay, listen, it's cool that a lot of Jewish people are standing up saying, "Don't kill and spill blood in my name. What you're doing is wrong." But we need to listen to the Palestinian people themselves. Yeah. We need more Palestinian voices out there, right? That's why I love that one dude on TikTok that's got 1 million followers, that he talks to Israeli people. They come on, they scream and curse at him. But he's a voice there. He was a refugee. He had to leave Gaza because, at one point, and now he's in the States. He's very fortunate to do so. But did you find any advocates for the Palestinians that are Israeli themselves that are saying what the government is doing is wrong?
I'm confused. Did I find any
Israeli citizens of Israel that are pushing back against the government's treatment of Palestinians?
No, I didn't, but I have to say I didn't spend as much time in Jerusalem, which is pretty much entirely just controlled by Israel, mostly Israelis there. Palestinians aren't allowed to go there. So if you're in Jerusalem, you're going to hear the Jewish perspective, which is where Jeremy Lafredo was. And so he got to hear the Jewish and the non-Palestinian perspective, like the Christians and all of that. And I'm glad he did that because it's another way to expose them. However, I think on the other side of the coin, what you just said is the Palestinian voices need to be heard, because the Palestinians shouldn't need Jewish voices to make their claims looked on as valid. And I'm just, that's all I've been seeing. Yeah. Even with Norman Finkelstein, why does his statement count more than Palestinians saying it themselves? And it's kind of like we're highlighting voices that are Jewish in order to validate what Palestinians are saying. And that's in and of itself a problem, because they shouldn't have to do that. And I'm not saying these people aren't advocating for Palestinians. They are. But it shouldn't be a necessity for that to happen. We should be hearing it directly from their voices. Yeah. And I
definitely think we need balance. But once again, like for a lot of those Jewish people who showed up for the protest, I am proud of them for saying not in my name. But you're right. We are still, I would like to see a little bit more. I would like to see a lot more Palestinian voices come forth and speak and be heard from, whatnot. You're right that, it's even the World Kitchen situation. You're absolutely right. Why does it have to be Westerners that are bombed before people go, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Like, hello, isn't a Palestinian life just as precious as a white person's life? I get that. So, I just try to find the balance there and, use it to my ability to say, okay, let's highlight these other voices that need to be heard. Now, fam, I don't know if people don't want to believe us when we've said from the get-go, this is never about Israeli security, or getting rid of and eradicating Hamas, because we know that, and Ron Paul was the first to say it on the floor of Congress, that Israel created Hamas as a counterbalance or a counter action to the Yasser Arafat PLO government. And then we knew years later that Israel continued to fund Hamas, coming from Netanyahu's own mouth. But if you don't want to believe us, you don't want to believe Vanessa Beeley and all these other people who've been screaming about this for quite some time, maybe you'll believe Colonel McGregor and Judge Napolitano. Listen to this video, guys, of what they have to say. I said it the cat's out of the bag, I guess. I mean, are you going to believe me now? And if you don't believe me, you never see the Israelis show you, oh, we got this Hamas commander, we got this Hamas. It's like, how many Hamas people have you seen arrested? No, they just arrest a Palestinian a clerk or a Palestinian cook or a Palestinian farmer and say he's Hamas, and Americans, they buy it. Why? Because not only is our government bought out by the Israeli lobbyists, but our media is bought out by the Israeli lobbyists. So they get to control the narrative, they get to control the policy, they get to act and start screaming, oh, it's so sad what's going on. But, those are just the casualties of war. Just got to deal with it. Oh, Hiroshima, we only bombed civilians, but it was the casualties of war. We are so far removed as Americans from what's really, really going on because, like Niko House says, we're behind the gun, and that's the safest place to be. Once that is taken away, and for me, the big thing to highlight was the Moscow attack. The Russians are not stupid. They didn't grab those guys right away. They let them go further into town to get closer to Ukraine while they were tapping their phones, listening to what's going on. What the American elites or the Western elites or the oligarchs, whoever's running this goddamn place is doing is dangerous. They're bringing us close to World War III, and Americans need to wake up and hold their government accountable. Let's listen to this video, and then we'll get your thoughts on it, fam.
Is the war, transitioning, Colonel, is the war in Gaza about Israel national security and about eliminating Hamas, or is it about expanding the landmass of the Israeli state?
Well, first of all, if it were about Israeli national security, I imagine the Israelis would have gone about it rather differently. There are different kinds of things that could be done other than massive bombardment, because you have special ops forces, you have very competent special ops troops in the Israeli Defense Force. They could have gone in there and done a lot of damage without bombing the place into submission. And as we all know, when you do that to an urban area, you make it easier to defend. And that's why Hamas continues to operate and is absolutely not destroyed or conquered. Now, this no longer has anything to do with Israeli national security, because Hamas on its best day could never possibly challenge the Israeli state and put its existence at threat. This is an old plan taken off the shelf, dusted off, and put into action. This is something the Israelis have wanted to do for a long time, which is eradicate what's left of the Arab population from Israel. I've had more than one tell me privately, we should have done this 30 or 40 years ago. Well, okay, but they recognized that opportunity was past. It was no longer possible. Well, it's turned out to be possible because 30 or 40 years ago, the Israel lobby and its agents inside the United States did not control the U.S. government. Today, they control the United States government. They control the media. They control finance, not just us, but also London and much of Western Europe. And as a result, they can impose discipline. And that's what you're seeing in operation. We are not going to walk away from Israel. We're going to back them to the hilt. So, yes, we're backing the expansion of the Israeli state. No question about it.
You're muted.
It was an anti-Semitic trope, fam, calling out Israel for owning our media and everything else. The only thing I want to correct Colonel McGregor on, he said this is no longer about Israeli security.
Yeah.
It was never, ever about Israeli security. He was right. This is an old plan, dusted off. Now, people were saying, oh, so now you're admitting that this was planned by the Israeli government, this attack. No, I think they're just taking advantage of the situation to say, okay, this is what we need to do. Had they done the attack themselves or planned the attack themselves and used it to justify what was going on, they would have never allowed the Palestinian resistance with Hamas to grab all the weaponry and get it underground, to grab all the hostages and get them underground. It would have been something just kind of bleak and easy, where the Netanyahu government wouldn't have so much pressure, where people are saying, stop what you're doing because it's not working, get our hostages out, even if you have to make an exchange. And they're saying no. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think this is a situation where it was planned. I think they're just taking advantage of it. But once again, in my opinion, fam, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree, this was never, ever about Israeli security or eradicating Hamas. It was about the expansion of Israel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious it was not about Israeli security if you understand this didn't begin on October 7th. If you understand that this began even before 1948 and the Nakba with the Balfour Declaration, you know that this has been about Western expansion and using Israel as the contingent to formulate that Western expansion. This is why you see the gas energy reserves being built, and you see that port that's supposed to be a humanitarian port be built and be focused on by the West, because that is exactly what they're using to control the maritime positions. And this is why they hate Ansarallah, because they're running into the opposition by them in the Al-Mandab. And what you're seeing here is another thing I want to correct him on, is that on its best day, Hamas couldn't defeat Israel. Again, Israel is perhaps an intelligence power, it is a military power, but it is not all built up that it's not all that it's built up to be. Because Israel didn't foresee this. They didn't foresee what was going to happen. They thought they could just go in there and defeat Hamas. Have they? They haven't. So how could Israel, with all the backing, all the funding of the US government, actually not be able to defeat Hamas, who doesn't have all these weapons? And again, it's not just Hamas. There are other resistance factions that have been fighting far longer and far more passionately than Hamas. You have the whole Al-Aqsa mission that has been entirely the entire focus of all of this. And you had the attacks prior to the October 7th attacks, which were the attacks in the mosques and in the areas of Jenin. All of this led up to October 7th. So again, I think that because this is coming from a Western-centric perspective, in spite of the fact that they're saying, you know, Israel is losing, they're missing the resistance faction. They're missing the analysis of the fact that the resistance extends beyond Hamas. It extends beyond Palestine. It includes Hezbollah. It includes Ansarallah. It includes Iran. And all of that together, yes, could easily defeat Israel, not even on its best day. And that is something that Americans need to know in the United States. It is something that Westerners need to know. And again, Iran is going to respond to what was done to them. And they are going to do so in a military way, not in a tit for tat, we're going to kill your civilians like you killed ours way. That's not how the Eastern world responds. But it will be a response, and I think that's what we're going to see. But I think it's time Westerners need to stop underestimating what the resistance is, because they clearly, time and time again, diminish it by saying Israel this, Israel that. Israel has clearly militarily lost, and they're not going to recuperate from this.
Jamie, if you can take down that video, I switched out the person I was sharing from, and I got Khaleesi's clip instead. And there's been a lot of talk. I think that's fam since Tucker Carlson kind of had a video with this one particular Lutheran priest. And I remember he did a video around Christmas time, Jesus is under the rubble. And it was very, very powerful, trying to bring attention to what was going on in Gaza as far as, you know, everybody. Not just Palestinian Arabs, but the Christian community. Anybody in Gaza is subject to get bombed and whatnot. And I think there's been a lot of talk about the way the people of Israel, and I don't know if you've witnessed any of this or have talked about any of this, how they feel about Christians too. Now, once again, injustice to anybody is an injustice to everybody, right? We can say that and whatnot, and I'm not pointing it out because it's Christians, but I just want to say the Israeli state doesn't treat Christians well as either. I mean, we see videos of, you know, these Israeli guys spitting on Christians, telling them they're wrong and whatnot. But take a look at this video too as well, because it just shows you they have they don't have a care in the world. They'll bomb everybody. This is a church that was built a long time ago, a Catholic church. So take a look.
So there are 400 people here. All of them are Christian Palestinians. We are taking shelter here because we thought that this place is safe. We are trying to do our best to stay here. We have been here our whole lives in this St. Porphyrios Church. This is a 1700 years old church, and without any warning they just bombed this building, including inside the church. There were 90 people here in that building, 400 people in that church itself, and as you can see, like, we spent the whole night trying to get people from inside. We got a lot of bodies, deaths, injured people. We were talking about 17 deaths at least, and at least 17 injured. Everyone here, everyone, without any exclusion, have nothing to do with politics, have nothing to do with anything. We're living in peace, we're living in our country, we're here since ever, and we can't take this anymore, actually. This is more than enough.
Fam, I just like to point out that this church was built in 1725, and this situation does remind me a lot of what we saw in Iraq, right? Iraq had a lot of Christians. So did Syria, right? Syria, Iraq, and whatnot. And, I just, try to get this across to the populace, right, in this country, that there's always, Christianity this, Christianity that. They're so strong on their Christian values. Well, look what they're doing to Christians abroad in the Middle East. Look what they did in Iraq. They pretty much, I think 9 out of 10 Christians that were in Iraq are gone, and I don't know what the number is in Syria, but here we have more of the same. So, I mean, where are your values at, and why aren't anybody talking about this in the United States? I mean, can't you see that this has never been about religion? It's always been about geopolitics, and it's been about expansion and power, and it's always having an enemy at all times to make sure that you can constantly perpetuate the state of war. It's sad, and to see a church that was built in 1725. Fam, your thoughts?
I mean, it's just ridiculous because it has never been about religion. The only reason the people don't talk about Israel's attacks against Christian or Catholic churches and people is because it completely debunks the whole Muslims are evil and we need to go after Muslims theory. So again, it doesn't stand up to that. So this is why they never talk about it. And I think it's fine to point it out that yes, they're attacking Christians, but here we are again. We have to point out that they're attacking Christians. So maybe some people will stop carrying that. Will start carrying that 33,000 plus people have been killed in Gaza, because now it's about Christians and not about, Palestinians. And by the way, a lot of Palestinians are not Muslim. And this is something that is never pointed out. It's like a lot of these people are not Muslim, just like in Syria. Again, a lot of them are Orthodox Christians. This is the thing. And Bashar al-Assad is a secular president, which is even more interesting. Yet somehow it's all about Iran and Iran's religious beliefs and what Iran is doing. But again, Iran has allies that are Christians. So this isn't about religion. It has never been about religion. It's always been the excuse that it is about religion. So you Westerners can view the Arabs and Muslim people in a way that is marked as a terrorist. And this is all they are, barbaric terrorists. And that's that.
The last clip I have is still, fam, even though McGregor, he said that this is not about, once again, Israeli security or Hamas. You still have people from our lawmakers and the State Department still saying Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. It looks like Blinken is about to break down in tears here, fam, because he can't. I don't understand why you always say, poor Palestinians. What about Hamas? Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. A volcano went off in Italy. Hamas. You know what I'm saying? Everything is Hamas's fault. They think if they continue to scream it, that the lie is going to stick. People aren't that stupid. They might be consumed. They might be duped, but they're not that stupid to the point that you're just completely failed on this narrative. Here is your favorite State Department goon, Antony Blinken, screaming about Hamas still.
Also be, I think, important that so much of the
Make sure the volume's up.
understandable passion, outrage, and anger directed at Israel for the plight of Palestinian civilians in Gaza, that some of that might also be reserved and directed for Hamas. It remains astounding to me that the world is almost deafeningly silent when it comes to Hamas. We would not be where we are had they not chosen to engage in one of the most horrific acts of brutality and terrorism on October 7th, and had they then, having done that, not refused these many, many months to get out of the way of civilians, to stop hiding behind them, to put down their arms, to release the hostages, to surrender. Where's the outrage there?
I don't know how you can hear this and not be outraged as an American when you see that where is the outrage of the 33 plus thousand Palestinians, or the outrage of the thousands of Palestinians that are in prison, whose mothers I got to interview, who, like, where is the outrage for these people? Like, it's just the utter hypocrisy. I don't think soulless ghoul encompasses it, because I think a soulless ghoul is still better than Tony Blinken and Netanyahu both. I mean, I think the best costume you can have, the scariest costume for next Halloween, are these people. I don't understand how they can say that with a straight face. And again, Tony has a Israeli passport, right? He has this citizenship. All of these people are owned by Zionist entities, are owned by AIPAC. This is not conspiratorial. This is reality. And actually, this one site just released like a link where you can go and see how much they're getting paid by AIPAC and others like them to basically talk about Hamas. And you know they have the same talking point, because all they do is say, why haven't they talked about Hamas and release the hostages? When you land in Tel Aviv airport, literally you're walking through the airport, there is a whole like line of the posters of all the hostages that were taken by Hamas, and how horrible this is, and how they haven't released the hostages. But nobody gives two fucks about the hostages that are sitting in prison with no trial, with no law. There's nothing being done for them. The families aren't even informed where they get sent, and most of them come back completely destroyed as people, not just like physically, which is a given, but psychologically. And nobody cares about these hostages because they're terrorists. And that's how it's sold to the American public.
Yeah, the things that really I point out too as well, the fact that it's Hamas, right? That's the reason why. But also the fact that they keep on saying that, they try to make it like October 7th was when this all started. I think you've pointed out in this video alone, fam, that this has been going on way before. This has been going on before 1948. It's almost like the Russia-Ukraine situation. We talk about what happened in 2014, but it was going on way before that too as well. Yeah. It might take a half a day of research, ladies and gentlemen, to figure out what's what, to see that this stuff is not about what the mainstream media says it is. And like you said, he's got dual citizenship, to go to Israel whenever he wants. And it's laughable to me at this point right now that they continue to say these things over and over and over again. I made the analogy because they're changing their narrative, because it's a public relations nightmare. You get people like Chuck Schumer talking about, oh, we need to get rid of the Netanyahu government. Some of the squad members act like, oh, we need to cease fire, as if the whole Congress didn't justify these actions, and as if the whole Congress was, speaking up at one point about all the money and weapons we give to Israel. And just recently, more and more weapons just recently went to Israel from the United States. And I said it's like the Israel-United States relationship is like a best friend telling him to stop beating his wife, but then he hands him a thicker belt to beat her with. It's so stupid at this freaking point. Look at the actions, not the lip service, fam. The empty hot air words. It's the lip service that's just nauseating at this point.